why is one side not developing as much as the other side? And when I was getting out of the shower and just getting dressed in the dressing room, I started to really notice like my left breast actually is looking a little smaller, noticeably smaller. And I'm not sure if I did a self-exam because I'm not even sure if I knew what self-breast exams were at the
Right.
time. And I started to notice like some dimpling. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Bodies can do different things, but like dimpling is that's a little deformed. What's going on here? So, so got the biopsy right away. A nurse practitioner called me when I was at work. She disclosed that I had a stage 2 breast cancer. And so, of course, you immediately Google what stage 2.
Share your story back in September of 2016 when you were diagnosed and how you discovered that you had breast cancer and what the emotions were when you heard those words.
I can't believe it was 2016. It feels literally in my head like it's so vivid. But just like any sort of like crazy event that, whether it's positive or negative, like giving birth, getting married, buying your first house, graduating, getting diagnosed with cancer is just one of those dates that stick in your head for the rest of your life. I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer at the age of
Mm.
34. It was at the tail end of 2016. So while I was going through my diagnostic period, I would say in September, October, November of 2016. The majority of my treatment really took place in 2017. I never had a mammogram before. And so I was what I used to think of as being very healthy, athletic, very active. My now husband, then boyfriend, and I were strict vegans at the time. And really, like 34, like you're living large at that time.
Yeah.
I'm living in Boston. I'm loving life. Like things are great. Had a career in higher education that I loved. And I never thought I would get cancer. It was not even on my radar. It was not something that we talked about as a family. We did not talk about really a lot of family history around illness. I don't know if that's typical or not typical. Even just growing up, aunts and uncles, they might not be feeling well or they might have missed like an event or something, but it was never talked about for like the reasons why, if they had cancer or did not have cancer. So it wasn't really a term or something I really understood or was exposed to, for better or for worse. So I was noticing when I was at the gym working out, I'm totally like lifting weights with my t-shirt on and in front of the mirror flexing. And I was like, I'm doing this pretty regularly. Like I'm starting to get some muscles. I'm feeling good about all of this. And I actually started noticing that my pectoral muscles were not developing. And I'm like, okay, I'm definitely lifting like my right side and left side, right? So like why is one side not developing as much as the other side? And when I was getting out of the shower and just getting dressed in the dressing room, I started to really notice like my left breast actually is looking a little smaller, noticeably smaller. And I'm not sure if I did a self-exam because I'm not even sure if I knew what self-breast exams were at the
Right.
time. I was just like, what's going on with my breast? What's going on?
Exactly.
And I started to notice like some dimpling. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Bodies can do different things, but like dimpling is that's a little deformed. What's going on here? So the scary thing is, if you actually Google like breast dimpling, the first thing that shows up on Dr. Google is like breast cancer. So going from not even being on my radar to, oh, something was going on here, I was thinking it was like muscle related. Maybe I have no idea what I was thinking, but I was definitely not thinking cancer.
Hmm.
And then going through just the internet, realizing, oh gosh, like maybe I should do a self exam. What does it feel like? Do I feel a lump? There is dimpling and all of these things. And so I was in the watch, wait, and see, but really wanting to get in with my primary care doctor to ask, to question.
Hmm.
And so I will preface this actually that 2 years prior, I was dismissed when I thought there was something going on with my breast. I was 32, I was too young. There was no reason for concern. My primary doctor was not concerned. And so I just let it go. That was probably the extent of, what's going on with my body.
Right.
This time, I remember going in and I was showing her, like, see this dimpling? See what's happening here? This doesn't seem right to me. There was no, maybe they have a really good poker face. I'm not really sure, but there was no concern. And
Which is
so I really had
interesting
to,
given one of the
yeah.
first things that came up on Google was dimpling of breast is breast cancer.
Yes, that between like that and discharge or other types of symptoms. So I had to advocate and fight for getting a diagnostic mammogram. Being 34, I had to figure out the insurance, had to make sure it was being covered. And at this point, I was like, I'm willing to pay out of pocket because I just need peace of mind so I can sleep at night to know that this is not cancer. So we got that scheduled. And at this point, my parents, they live out of state. So I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, I'm going in for my very first mammogram. Like, it's like a big girl moment. I'm nervous. But I also felt like I had to tell my mom because in the event that it comes back cancer, and we know how the story is going to end, but in the event that it comes back cancer, I wanted to bring them along and that, hey, by the way, we're worried, not worried. We're going to go get a mammogram. We're going to see how it goes. So, fast forward to my first mammogram day, they took a variety of pictures. I had nothing to compare it to, so I just thought this was normal. They have to take a ton of pictures. I thought this was the common
Right.
practice. And my radiation tech or someone comes in later to say, what are you doing this afternoon? Would love to squeeze you in at lunchtime. The doctor would like to do a biopsy right away. And so that's when everything became real. I realized that me coming in late for work was going to transition to me taking the full day off of work. I called my husband. I asked him to come down to the hospital because they wanted to do a biopsy. And again, these words were all new to
Mhm.
me. Yes, I'm smart, I'm educated. I know what the word technically means, but I have no idea what that means in terms of that. I had to sign all of these consent forms. I was being told that there's a potential of my lungs and having a collapsed lung and all of these things. I was like,
Super
whoa, whoa,
scary
whoa.
at your
Like,
age, right? Because you're
so
so
scary,
vibrant
so
and you're
scary.
living your life, as you said, and you're healthy, right? You're doing all the right
Yeah.
things.
So got the biopsy right away, and then you're in that wait and see period, which we all know is trauma in and of itself, just waiting and seeing. And I was actually kind of reflecting on this recently on that wait and see, because we always talk about how terrible the waiting
Mhm.
is, right? And you're waiting for test results. You're constantly on the computer trying to refresh your portal to see if there's any new information. And I'm wondering psychologically, do you think that we are actually like helping ourselves like come to terms with whatever that answer is in that waiting period?
Mm.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I was like, maybe this is like a blessing in disguise type of thing to allow our brain to catch up on of what we just went through.
Looking back, did you think there must be something pretty serious going on if they've gone to the extent of a biopsy? Did you then think I might have breast cancer?
Yes, you definitely started playing the scenarios. What if I had breast cancer? What does this mean for my job? For all of these that I had that I was looking forward to. I had a trip planned actually to take a cohort of students down to Chile for a immersion experience that was coming up. I was diagnosed, all this was happening in September. So you also start to get excited about holidays and Thanksgiving and
Mhm.
travel and vacation. And so all of a sudden it was like, wait, what does this actually mean in the short term? And how do I navigate that? So yes, I was definitely starting to play out some of those scenarios.
And then you got the call.
Yes. So a nurse practitioner called me when I was at work. I don't know if this is normal or not, but she was like, we don't normally give results over the phone. We normally make an appointment for you to come in. And I'm like, obviously, if you're making an appointment for me to come in, that's probably meaning that I have cancer
Why else
because why
would I
else would
need
you
to
be
be
making the
there? Yeah.
appointment?
Oh, interesting.
So she disclosed that I had a stage 2 breast cancer. And so, of course, you immediately Google what stage 2
Mhm.
means. And we just followed the process. I think your whole body goes numb at that point. It's okay, tell me what I need to know, where I need to be, who do I need to show up with, and what's the process? Okay, you just told me I had cancer. What's the process for eradicating this like tomorrow?
Mhm.
So, really just trying to get into that fight or flight mode where we were going to fight and figure out what had to happen next.
When I got the call, it was, we can't tell you what the stage is yet. We have to wait until the surgery because it could be further along than we know. It depends if it's in the lymph nodes. So I never got a staging. I automatically thought I'm going to die.
We did so much testing leading up to that initial call. And I do caution people that, really, even if they give you a staging option, like at the diagnostic phase, they're not going to know the full until they actually go in there during the surgery. So it can
Yes.
change. What I ended up going through was a biopsy which escalated into also a lymph node biopsy because as they were doing more like kind of palpitations or like feeling under my arms, there was also some concern that there were some um, pea-size shape hard calcifications there too that they wanted to biopsy. I also did an MRI needle guided biopsy as well. I got poked a lot in
Yeah.
this like diagnostic phase. I don't know if it was because there was already lymph node involvement. They also did some CT scans for me as well as a head to toe bone scan. So they were looking to see at that point if it had metastasized, if it had gone to other parts of my body, all as part of that workup.
Mhm.
So at the time, I had no idea that's what they were looking for. I was like, oh, this is just what they do. You get a CT scan, you get a bone scan, you get all of these tests. And it wasn't until later that I was talking to others that I'm like, oh gosh, they were really looking for
They
metastatic.
really
Like,
were because
I didn't know
I
that.
didn't have any of that on my first diagnosis. Like it was biopsy, then a lot of blood work, and then the surgery itself. But I think where you had your tests done, they did a thorough job. Like it wasn't until my
Yes.
reoccurrence that I got everything that you're talking about.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was because it was in my lymph nodes, and then that kind of put me on this other path for
Yeah.
testing and whatnot. If it was my age, if it was the fact that I did some genetic testing and there was no genetic predisposition, I'm not really sure. But I am very grateful that I had such an incredible
Yeah.
team and an amazing oncologist who just ordered all of the tests, and we were going to be very aggressive.
And so what kind of treatment and surgery did you end up doing?
I started off with neoadjuvant chemotherapy. So, because my diagnosis was HER2 positive, I guess at the time it was equivocal, but I feel like I was treated as if I were HER2 positive. They started me off on chemotherapy first. I was on 5 different types of chemotherapy for about 6 months. So, the ACT HP regimen, and that was challenging. I think I blocked a lot of it out, but what I do remember distinctly outside of losing your hair and your nose hair, so you're constantly blowing your nose, the fatigue, the exhaustion, I just remember coming in for those weekly checkups with my oncologist, getting the blood work done, getting ready for my Taxol infusion. And I think it was like maybe week 10 or week 11 or around 10 or 11 out of 12. And my oncologist asking, how are you doing? And I'm like, I think I'm doing fine, but I am just like tired of this. I am tired of showing up every week. I am tired of needing to put my life on hold to get chemotherapy. I am just ready to be done with this piece. So it was more in my recollection of just like a barrier than yes, I can deal with the physical and that's no fun. But it was the mental piece that I think really weighed on me of into the hospital, taking a half day to get the infusion, knowing that you're going in to sit there to give yourself this like willingly toxic chemicals into your body that can potentially cause neuropathy or all of these other issues. So it was for me very mental trying to go through the chemotherapy. So that also, again, this kind of waiting period, if you will, in those 6 months, I had opportunities to do a lot of research on the type of surgery that would be best. So I was all over the board. I was, if I'm a candidate for a lumpectomy, we're going the lumpectomy route. If I can get implants, let's do it. That makes a lot of sense. If I want to go flat, I was feeling empowered some days. I was like, who needs more tissue expanders? We're just going flat. I was all over the place. And my poor husband was like, yes, whatever you want, dear, whatever you want. So supportive. So I ended up, when push came to shove, I ended up being eligible for a lumpectomy. So I had a lumpectomy on one side and then reconstruction to have more symmetry and size on the other
Okay.
side. So having surgery on both sides that also resulted in a full axillary node dissection because it did travel to my lymph node. So they took out all of the lymph nodes under my left arm. And I went home with 3 drains that day. So even with a lumpectomy, I think a lot of people think of it as it could be potentially simpler type of surgery. Um, you may or may not get drains, but given how much tissue they did remove under the
Mhm.
situation, I ended up with 3 drains at home
Some grenades
from that.
because they look,
Oh, grenades. I like
yeah,
that. Yes.
taped to your rib cage, right?
Oh gosh. So yeah. It was so gruesome too. I was like, again, mentally, like cancer, okay, I finally came to terms with that, but it was like the needles and the blood and the external drains. It was,
So you had the surgery, went through recovery, and you
yes.
have some kind of purpose must have come at that time because you have founded a company and it's thriving. And I'd love to how that even came about.
The treatment journey continues, and this is actually where we started thinking about what should we do next. So after surgery, I also needed 6 weeks of radiation treatment. I ended up having, I don't know if it was like 6 weeks, it was like the 30 days, 30 rounds of
Right.
radiation. And that's when, between surgery and radiation, I actually took a medical leave of absence from my job. I worked all through chemotherapy, but then took this time to heal from the surgery, and then knowing that I was going through radiation, I was going to be very tired and fatigued, to take some time to just really focus on my health, get my mobility back, get my energy levels back. I was incredibly active before my diagnosis, so I wanted to get back into walking, really wanted to get back into, like, I was telling and joking with my mom, I'm like, yes, I had breast surgery, but my legs are fine. I can still move. I don't need to be bedridden. It really was during that time that I started documenting my experience with breast cancer on YouTube. So if we think back to YouTube in 2016, 2017, like, it isn't what it necessarily is
Hmm.
today. And really started growing a following of just me sharing my story through video blogging on, this is what a day in the life of a breast cancer survivor and thriver looks like. And really realizing that there are people out there asking questions. They were looking for hope. They were looking for support.
Mm.
They were looking for somebody like them going through what they were going through. And me, I was just trying to keep my friends and family updated without having to make all these
Oh,
phone calls.
yeah.
So I got the YouTube channel. Um, and I don't know if you had a similar experience, but after my diagnosis, it was like, okay, do I go back to work now? And is that so mundane? Or am I being called for a larger purpose
Mhm.
or something else? Because when you're diagnosed, even though it was early stage and not metastatic, it is still a life-threatening disease that changes your perspective. And so to go back to an office setting where I would get frustrated that the printer didn't work, or something happened like during a meeting that used to like totally drive me crazy, it was no longer like getting under my skin the way it used to. I was like, my perspective on life has changed a little bit, and how can I utilize my skill sets and bring this forward into something that's going to have a lot of meaning and impact.
Mhm.
So we built survivingbreastcancer.org.
That's fantastic. And what were some of the first things you did to create that?
Oh gosh, the roadmap.
YouTube
Like,
obviously was really
yes.
the first step, right? You started creating these videos, you created a following, and I would imagine some of that fed into the idea of, I have something here. There's people out there looking for something they can't find anywhere else. And they came across your YouTube channel and found your story to be incredibly inspiring and supportive because they were going through the same thing.
Yes. Thank you for articulating exactly what I cannot get out. But I think that's the point, because your doctors are excellent. They're there to help you and treat you, and to the extent possible, cure you. But what we don't have in that setting is the peer to peer navigation, which I was clamoring for. Being diagnosed in Boston, I thought people would be coming out of the woodwork looking to help and support me. And they weren't. I was like, oh gosh, where is everybody? Like, I'm in a metropolitan area and they have access to some of the best hospitals, but I couldn't find my community of people to say, yes, I get it. That really sucks. Or that's really hard too. This is how I manage those side effects. So I really did turn to social media and YouTube for that community aspect.
Hmm.
And I found myself just sharing my personal experience on what it was like to be on these chemotherapy drugs. I have actually, one of our most popular YouTube videos is what it happens during radiation, week 1, week 3, and week 6. This is what the burns look like. This is how I was managing the side effects of the treatments. And I think that really resonates with people of, okay, here's a human, here's a real person going through
Mm.
it. What did she experience? Obviously, everyone's stories and experience are going to be different, but there's something tangible
That's
there.
right. Yeah, especially if somebody was in radiation who came across your channel and thought, oh my God, this is the education I've needed all along to understand how to deal with the burns because they're real and
Yeah.
severe.
Absolutely. It accumulates. In week 1, you're like feeling great. You're like, oh, this is nothing. Like, I can't even see anything. By week 6, you're like, gosh, I got hit by definitely a fire torch.
Yeah, exactly. So, is there one thing through that journey that really sunk in where you said, I need to create this because I think it would serve more women?
was a combination of the YouTube channel. My background is in education. So, I got my doctor in education. I don't know, I'm like an overachiever. Anyone who knows me, it's like that A type overachiever person. Yes. There was this idea of, okay, how can I educate and support
Mm,
people? And video is one modality for people who are using that as their channel.
mm-hmm.
But what about blogging? What about podcasting? What about having a website where information can just live? And I don't even know who you are. You're just an IP address coming to read stories, read and find information from a peer-to-peer perspective. So I started to build that resource base, if you will. And when we started thinking about what do we do with all this content that I've created, this idea of we should form this into a nonprofit. And so, of course, I was like, oh, that sounds like a challenge because applying for 501c3 status is a walk in the park. So, of course, I was up for the challenge. My husband and I, we took this really great vacation, I'll call it. We went up to Portland, Maine. We have like our Marriott point. So we're like, let's do a weekend and we'll just work. We'll whiteboard and we'll put it all out
That's
there
awesome.
and fill out what the application was like to become a 501c3. And that whole process really makes you write out your business
Mm,
plan, 3-year plan, your 5-year plan, who your board of directors are, how you get registered with the state and the federal levels, and really walking you through starting your business. And I would say that took probably about a 9-month period to get the application and all the materials, your articles of organization, your bylaws, like everything ready to go
right.
and to be sent out and evaluated. And I remember getting the determination letter saying, yes, you've been approved for a 501c3. I like still have the PDF like on my Google Drive. I'm like, this is the best thing ever that you're holding on to because it's allowing me now to go out and fundraise and to bring in the funding to offer the programs at no cost to our community.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing. And what a process. Did you already know the
Yes.
extent of what that process was going to look like, or were there some surprises along the way? Because that's 9 months is a long
Oh,
time to go and gather all that. That's
yes.
a really long time, especially when you're like, let's do this. And it's not an
Exactly.
instant
Exactly.
reward. Not that building a business is, there's many challenges along the way. Did you have somebody mentoring you through it?
Yeah. I still say to this day, I didn't go to school for this. I did not dream of growing up and like running a successful nonprofit, though I'm very proud of what I'm doing. Having to learn how to fundraise. Again, did not go to school for this. I'm still learning how to cultivate and steward donors and relationships, program management, like all of the things that you do to run a
Mm.
business. I joke saying, oh, today I'm wearing my VP of HR hat because I have to hire a contractor. Or today I'm wearing my VP of marketing hat because I need to figure out how to get this campaign out there. I love learning and I really enjoy being able to figure things out and learn and move forward.
Mhm.
So, yes, there were a lot of hiccups, a lot of moments of self-doubt. There still are. I'm not going to lie about that. And of course, just like cancer, what if this is cancer? What if this is not? What if I get approved and we're a 501c3? Or what if I don't? Do we apply again? What went wrong? And so I think leveraging just resources, trying to understand what is the entrepreneurship ecosystem like in the cities or towns or neighborhoods that you live in, to ask people because there are nonprofits out there. I'm not inventing the wheel. So let me ask people what it is that I don't know that I need to know.
Yeah, and that's a smart way to do it because you get the real coaching and advice that's needed to get through that phase because there's so much navigating I find when you're an entrepreneur, figuring things out. And yes, there's tons of information out there on YouTube, on Google, and now we have ChatGPT and Claude and everybody else to help support
Yes.
us. But there's a lot to grasp when you're starting any kind of business, and to lean into those resources just helps it be a little less challenging, don't you think?
Absolutely. Things as mundane as, okay, what's the title of our company going to be called? Or I guess I now need to set up a bank account because I'm going to be accepting donations. Just like the logistics.
Yeah, but isn't it exciting when you do set up that bank account for the first time and you're like, "Oh my god, my business has a bank account. There's no money in it, but
Yes.
it's open. It's ready."
Exactly. Right. It's ready for business.
Yeah, that's so exciting. How many
Yes.
people are in the community for your nonprofit?
Yeah, great question. So I just finished putting together our year-end reports. I feel like the numbers are always swirling. And then, of course, the timing of this recording is so fun because I have a board meeting coming up. So again, all of the numbers are really like front and center as I get drilled
Yeah.
tomorrow.
You're
Yeah, like I said earlier, like people learn and access information and resources in a variety of different
Mhm.
ways. One way of looking at this is how many people have come to our website to poke around, read the blogs, get information just from a URL. And so that can range anywhere from just shy of a million to over 1.5 million of visitors a year, which is really
Wow.
great. They're getting information, they're finding
That's
us. And that's the other
amazing.
thing.
Don't
Thank
you
you.
think
And that's the other piece too, is like if we're creating content, it needs to be seen. It
yeah.
can't just be living out there in the ether. So it's really important that we're actually mapping our content to what people are Googling, to
Mhm.
what people are searching for. So one of our top searches, people are really curious to know if your BIRAD score leads to cancer. So if you're getting screened and radiation and mammography and you come back with a BIRAD score of 5, the number one question we find on our website is BIRAD's 5 always
What
cancer?
is
And
BIRAD? I
so
don't even know what
again,
that is.
so the BIRAD score, I-RADS, it stands for the Breast Imaging Reporting and Data System, is a standardized numerical classification of 0 through 6 used by radiologists to describe breast imaging results. So that could be results from mammography, from MRIs, or ultrasounds.
Okay.
And it estimates the likelihood of cancer.
When you don't have it, right? Do they automatically give us those
So
tests? I don't think I've ever had one.
go double check on your portal and see when you have x-rays or your mammography when you had them.
It's interesting, like you were saying, a lot of the people in your community are asking that question. Maybe more so today, that's a regulated test that they're giving automatically, as
Mm.
opposed to even in 2013 and 2018 when I had it done.
Right. Yeah, and there's so many more tools available to assess risk, to assess recurrence risk, et cetera.
Right.
So I think people are getting more information. So that's one of the questions that people come to us, and we have a blog about it, and people can get that information. Other questions that we get, I know the Onco DX score was really popular for a while when that came out of will I need chemo, will I not need chemo? Just real human questions.
Mhm.
And so we really try to address those questions that people are getting. If we don't know the answer, I would go out and talk to a radiologist. Let's do a podcast on what BIRADS actually means. And then really just trying to beef up the education around that through a blog, a podcast, a YouTube video to share with the community members.
And you do have a podcast covering breast cancer, whether you're talking to a medical team or a patient who's surviving.
Exactly. So, breast cancer conversations, it's available. Again, for us, it's really important that all of this information lives out there for people to find and provide hope and education and information, as well as our virtual programs that we host. We started off with our what we call Thursday Night Thrivers support group. It started off as a Thursday night meetup for all stages and all subtypes of breast cancer. I remember the first night that we hosted it. It was right during COVID when we were clamoring for community and we had cancer. And we hosted, and it really, you asked like how we started the business. I was like, I'm available on Thursdays at 7. So I'm just going to do this on Thursdays at 7. It worked for my schedule. And it was a peer to peer support group. And I remember asking the community, how often do you want to meet? And I was thinking maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. They unanimously were like, we want to meet every Thursday.
Wow.
So since March of 2020, we have been meeting for a support group every Thursday at 7 p.m. We have a standard meeting. And it has now grown to be an early stage group. We have groups specifically for metastatic. We now have groups for inflammatory breast cancer, as well as groups offered in Spanish. And so, again, this is the demand of the community. I tell people, like, I'm just your conduit and infrastructure. You guys are the ones that are making us thrive.
That's great. That's
Yes,
really a
thank you.
sign of the growth and how many people need exactly what you're offering out there. That's got to feel good. You should
Mhm.
be so proud of
It
yourself.
does. I know. If only I can get to the gym that consistently. I don't know.
That's part of being an entrepreneur and having your own business. The hours are
Exactly.
never
Exactly.
ending. Yeah,
Hmm.
that makes
Right.
sense. So what surprised you the most about becoming a founder?
That's a great question. I'm figuring it out. I think what is surprising me the most is really trying to change your mindset from like the doer bee and the in the weeds mode to actually leading at an executive level. I think as we started off this conversation, I was creating the videos, I was the voice or the face behind the organization, I was the one writing the blogs. But as we are growing as an organization, we're almost 9 years old now. We need a team, we need a staff, we need additional people. And this doesn't have to be like the Laura Carfang show. In fact, it's better when it's not because I can then focus on these other things I didn't go to school for, like fundraising, but knowing that the infrastructure of the organization is solid and can
Hmm.
operate and getting to that place of really thinking on long-term strategy and growth versus being in the weeds and figuring out what is our color palette and does my Instagram account look great and who's checking the info
Yeah, all
inbox.
the things I'm going through right now. I get that all
Oh,
too well.
yes.
Yeah.
But I do love that. I'm not gonna lie though, one of my favorite things to do is look at color palettes. And when I'm stressed, I'll just have my cup of tea and I'll look at the font, the typography. I'll be like, you know what, this is my decompression mode right now.
At least you know what it is,
So,
right?
yes, exactly. You feel productive in like a procrastinating type of
Yeah.
way.
And it's so great that you have a team because now you have the experts of the particular areas in the company that can actually execute on the function and the things that you need in order to continue to thrive. They probably bring their own set of ideas because Lord knows we all can't know everything. And when somebody brings that surge of new ideas that's needed to get you to that next level of growth, that's exciting too. And that everybody's on board and heading for the same goal.
We hope so. We think so.
Yeah. You've been in business for 9 years. Do you have a 10-year anniversary plan?
I am working on that. I am so hopeful that we'll have some sort of big campaign and really like launch into year 10.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Just around the corner. When is it?
It'll be 2027.
Okay.
So my 10-year cancerversary is coming up this September. So September 2026, it'll be 10 years since my original diagnosis, which is also wild to think of. And then shortly thereafter, just I'm trying to think of like my own timeline of when I got diagnosed and then started the organization. The following year will be when we celebrate 10 years.
That's exciting. When you
Yeah.
started the company, were you still in a corporate job or working another job full time while you were starting this at the same time?
I was, yes. And I was doing that job for, I would say, the last 8 years of starting the nonprofit. And that was for a variety of reasons. I think anyone has their own set of circumstances. For me, there's something really great about having a steady income and health
Yes.
insurance and really being able to figure out when I was ready to take this leap of faith, which happened recently for me to transition into this role full time at survivingbreastcancer.org. I think it allows me to actually, I don't know how to say this. It's a little scary to be leading. And there's a lot of pressure I think that I put on myself now that I'm leading the organization, especially from a financial perspective,
Mm,
knowing that we want to bring in money to offer our programs and services, but we have to be realistic that there has to be overhead because in order to keep the lights on and the programs running, you need to hire personnel and you need to be able to hire personnel.
mhm.
And so I think that is part of the education of running a nonprofit. And I remember talking to my board when I was so proud that we were like 100% volunteer run. And a couple board members were like, "Yeah, that's great, but actually, if I have to choose between donating to you or another organization, I'm going to donate to the other organization because they come across as more mature, more stable, and sustainable because they're actually hiring
Mhm.
staff to run their programs." And again, everyone's perspective is a little bit different of what donors want to donate to. But it was this idea of, okay, it's great to be all volunteer based, but there's also some benefit when you're not all volunteer.
So do you have a combination of the two or is everybody personnel now?
Oh, yes. We're still very heavily volunteer. And so we have at this date and time, we have a small team of 4 that keep everything running. And I am so grateful to all of them because they're my glue because I'm the crazy one who like wakes up at 3 in the morning with an idea and they're like, "Laura, stay focused."
They're like, "Oh, no, she's coming with another idea."
Yes.
Yeah. And how many volunteers do you have?
I would say at any given time, on average, about 30. We're always looking to grow more volunteers. We have actually a great structure in place where we have an early stage leadership team of volunteers and a metastatic volunteer leadership team. So those are my sounding boards for a lot of the programs that we initiate. And then from there, we have people who volunteer for some of our programs, like our peer to peer support groups. We have volunteers who lead our meditation
Mm.
class, which is just really wonderful because these are people who have been diagnosed with cancer that are coming back to give back to the community.
Oh, I love that. Do
Yeah.
you find that you need volunteers locally, or do you have volunteers that are working remotely based on whatever their function is?
I will take anyone, everywhere, anyway.
All right,
So,
everybody, did you hear that?
but yes. Yeah. We're as a virtual organization, a lot of our volunteers are remote. I do like in person as well. So, whether you're in Boston and want to connect with us because that's where I'm located, that's fantastic. But because our volunteers are all over, I'm happy to connect you with our volunteers who are in Kentucky or California or Miami. We're slowly starting to build that camaraderie in person.
Based on the people who come to your site or reach out, what do you find most are struggling with?
I think where to start. I think a lot of actually this has propelled us to start a new program actually that we're launching April 1st. It's ironic that it's on April Fools. But we are actually because of these questions, we've been getting a handful of questions of people who are newly diagnosed with breast cancer. And I think I'm not sure if you've experienced this also, but given that we've been diagnosed a while ago. We're almost like the veterans now. So, what is it like for someone if we can go back? And I know I started off this conversation with what my story was like, and it does feel like yesterday. But the reality is, it was 10 years ago.
Mm.
And so, for that person who recently just got diagnosed, what are the support resources and tools that they need that could have evolved and probably are not necessarily the same tools that I needed 10 years ago because things have changed. Technology has changed, treatments have changed, clinical trials have changed. And so when people are coming to us and finding out, okay, I just got diagnosed, what do I need to do next? I'm preparing for my first meeting with my oncologist. What questions should I ask my doctor? Even our conversation, what type of test should I get? Should I advocate to have a bone scan or is it not necessary because there's not lymph node involvement? Do I need to have conversations about fertility,
Mm.
family planning? What are the different things about how to talk to my employer about working? Or if I'm living with metastatic disease, how do I transition off of work if I am no longer able to work or I'm making the decision to no longer work so I can focus on my health? So there's a lot of practical logistic
Mm.
questions that yes, okay, I just got diagnosed and I'm scared and I'm having my freak out moment. But now I'm going to take that energy into the what can I control in this uncontrollable situation and how can you help me navigate that?
Yeah, it's really important. For anybody who's listening, I highly recommend leaning in on survivingbreastcancer.org because when I was diagnosed back in 2013, all you had was Google. That was it. And I did go to a couple breast cancer support groups that were part of the hospital. The groups were still relatively small. I thought it was really interesting because we all had different types of breast cancer. Everybody in that
Mm.
group chose a different path in terms of their treatment and their surgical procedure. And that's what made it so cool because you thought, I'm going through this big, scary thing all by myself. And going to the group for me was very scary. I think because I felt vulnerable and I was putting myself out there in
Oh,
front of all these women. And the groups were small, there was no more than four of us at each meeting. We all cried together when it was your turn to tell your
wow.
story. As soon as somebody's lips started quivering, all of our lips were quivering and we were crying together. And it was such a wonderful experience to know that I'm not doing this alone. But I would just say lean into what Laura is offering. Clearly, what you have is catching the attention of a lot of women with breast cancer. And for those listening, not to be afraid to ask the questions and reach out to people, even if it's not Laura or I that you're coming to. Don't be afraid to ask the questions because it's a big decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll leave listeners with, your decision is always going to be the right one for
Mm.
you. I definitely believe that as women, our superpower is our intuition. And if it feels right in your gut, you know you're making the right
Hmm.
choice. Everyone else is going to have an opinion and let them have their opinions. But if you can wake up every morning knowing that you made the best decision with the information you had at the time, you're in good hands.
Incredible advice. Yes. Well, thank you, Laura.
Oh, so much
Yes, so
fun.
much
I love being on
fun.
this side of the podcast.
Do you?
I think so. Yeah, this was a great experience. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for having
of
me.
course. So I'll put all of your contact information in the show notes and we'll push really hard towards the end.
I'll leave listeners with your decision is always going to be the right one. I definitely believe that as women, our superpower is our intuition. And if it feels right in your gut, you're making the right
Hmm.
choice. Everyone else is going to have an opinion and let them have their opinions. But if you can wake up every morning knowing that you made the best decision with the information you had at the time, you're in good hands.